Welcome to Pulpcast, the official podcast of thepulpmedia.com. In this podcast, we discuss everything in pulp culture, from comic books to movies and video games. This week, we bring you an interview with Scott Godlewski, co-creator and artist on Copperhead at Image Comics and The Dark and Bloody at Vertigo Comics. What are you going to be working on today?
Today I am working on Dark and Bloody pages.
Awesome. And that just came out, right?
One came out last Wednesday, the 10th.
Cool. How's the initial response been? What have you seen on your end?
So far so good. I mean, usually the only kind of reviews I see are the ones that people send me on Twitter. And it takes a lot of balls to send somebody a bad review. So I don't know if they're probably out there, but I haven't seen them.
Right. Cool. Well, we'll jump back to The Dark and Bloody a little bit later, but let's start with kind of your history, your introduction into comics. So why do you choose comics of all different mediums to create art within?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess I'm drawn to the storytelling aspect of it. I guess you just can't do that in anything else, just in regular illustration for whatever games or, books or whatever. There aren't a lot of guys that can tell a story in a single image. I mean, unless you're Norman Rockwell or something, that's a tough sell. So yeah, that's probably it. I mean, I like telling stories.
That's awesome. So how did you get your start in comics? Did you read when you were a kid? Did you kind of get in as a teenager or a college student?
Way back, maybe 91, 92, something like that. Trading cards were a big deal. Like all the X-Men trading cards and the first Marvel series and all that crap. Everybody had a trading card set, like Cable and Wolverine, and they were all just panels taken out of the comics to make these cheapo card sets, but I love that stuff. And I had no idea what they were, but I liked them. I thought the pictures were awesome, and the guys looked really cool. I loved that stuff. And then I don't know where it happened, but I found comic books, and it was like 100 cards and in one book, and it was the same price as a pack of cards. I just started reading comic books just because I love the art.
So you're more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, or what kind of resonates with you?
Well, back when I started reading, I was a Jim Lee guy and an X-Men guy, just like everybody else my age, probably. And then I didn't start reading anything other than X-Men for about 5 or 6 years. But no, I couldn't say that I was one way or the other. I mean, Image was huge. All those just the glut of books in those early years, Bloodstrike and Stormwatch and Backlash and all that stuff. I read all of that stuff.
So then what were some of your early projects? Like you got into comics, and then somewhere the spark came that you wanted to tell these stories artistically. So what began, or what projects did you begin with?
I guess I actually started drawing sequential stuff and coming up with my own stuff in high school, but I didn't get serious about putting anything together until about, and I don't remember the year. It must have been 07, 08, something like that. I had just gotten a DeviantArt account, and I was starting to talk to like-minded people, and decided that, you know what, there's a lot of really talented people here that aren't really doing anything. I know we all have jobs and that sort of stuff, but we like to draw, we like to make comics, so I thought I would put together an anthology book, and I called it Mysterious Adventure Magazine. And So we had just a bunch of friends. You ask. I know. I hate asking people for free work, and nobody should ever do that. But I mean, it's not something I was like making any money off of. But I just thought, look, these guys are really talented, and we should do something together. So yeah, I put this like pulp anthology together. We had Joe Delegata contribute some stuff, and Dave Flora, and Evan Shaner, and just just a bunch of guys, and it was a good time while it lasted. I mean, you know, we weren't. It was infrequent. I think we did 4 issues over something like a year and a half. Um, but that was my first experience with really sitting down and making a comic book from scratch rather than just copying panels from Stormwatch #1.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool that you kind of just took the initiative. You got your own hands, dirty with your own work, and then you just kind of figured it out from there.
Yeah.
So who are your artistic influences? What's kind of developed your style over time?
Well, when I started, I mean, it was Jim Lee and Andy Kubert, the X-Men guys. Who else? I was a big fan of Backlash, so Brett Booth was in there. I mean, Todd McFarlane. I read Spawn for a while. Yeah, it changes over time. You discover new things. I mean, everybody goes through a Jack Kirby phase, and then you find Mike Mignola. And I mean, right now, the guys that I probably, anytime I see their stuff, I'll stop what I'm doing and just pour over whatever it is. Kevin Nolan is huge. Just he's on my Mount Rushmore. I guess Sean Murphy right now is just killing everything. Let's see who else is on there. Tommy Lee Edwards, who he doesn't do a lot of mainstream sort of stuff, but he's like the artist, like other comedians will talk about Louis C.K. being the comedian's comedian, and I think Tommy Lee Edwards is that comic prose. But those are the big ones. I think every kid starts out with those Image guys and Jim Lee, and I don't want to say move on to better artists, but guys that do different things, that have different strengths. I think one of the things about being an artist and having influences is not copying those people, but finding out what they do well and making their strength your strength.
Yeah, kind of take what you like and then wrap it in your own stuff and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Let it snowball forward. So I've seen on Twitter you do some, what would you call it? I guess just like sketches on like comic boards and stuff like that, right? Like pinup kind of things?
Yeah, occasionally.
So
yeah.
Besides those, because I imagine that's kind of your warm-up daily sketch kind of idea.
I would love it to be. My schedule doesn't allow for putting pen to paper on anything that isn't work.
Okay.
So if I'm going to warm up, I got to do it on the page.
There you go. Because I was going to ask, what practices or activities do you do kind of to get yourself going in the morning, or just to keep your style expanding? So is it just work? Are you kind of like the Buddy Rich? You just practice on stage while you're performing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I guess that is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the line, the work's got to get done. So if I would love to be the guy that wakes up at like 6 o'clock and goes downstairs and makes a cup of coffee and sits down with my sketchbook and just watches the sun come up and that garbage. But I got 3 kids, and Getting them out of the house in the morning is a nightmare. So that's no go. If I'm cold, I just got to work it out on the page.
Lots of erasing.
Exactly.
Awesome. So let's talk about Copperhead.
Yeah.
How did you and Jay meet up to get it started?
A while ago, I think Jay found me on Facebook, and he had emailed me one day and said, I was talking to Eric Stevenson, and I told him I got this idea, and I think it's okay to talk about the idea because I don't think anything's ever going to come of it. He said, I've got this idea. It's a time travel book. It's called Nick at Time. It's about a guy named Nick that travels through time. And Steven's like, great, do it. And he had a copy of Code Breakers that I did for Boom. And he's like, I don't know, I want this guy to draw it. And Stevens is like, great, go get him. And so Jay emails me and it's like, yeah, what do you think of this idea? I think it'd be cool to do. And I'm like, yeah, I'm game. Let's do it. It sounds really neat. And a little time passed. After a while, Jay came back. He's like, I don't have any ideas for this thing. I can't get anything to work. It was just sort of a clever title. So I was like, all right, that's fine. I know how it goes. So I don't know how long after that. 6 or 8 months maybe, he came back and said, I really want to do something. And he threw a few genre ideas at me. Do any of these appeal to you? And one of them was space western. So, there's not, you don't see a lot of those in comics. So yeah, I like westerns. I like sci-fi. Let's put together Unforgiven and Star Wars and see what happens. So maybe, I don't know, for 3 or 4 months, maybe we just swatted emails back and forth and just, what about this? What about that? Wouldn't it be cool if this and that? And yeah, and after a while, it just sort of started building itself. And Jay went off and he wrote the first 28-page first issue, and we were off.
Are you a fan of traditional westerns, things like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, or like John Wayne kind of stuff?
I'm not. I'm a Clint Eastwood guy. So
there you go.
John Wayne. It always felt so clean and just sterile. And John Wayne's, he didn't feel like an everyman. He was John Wayne, big American hero guy. You were aware you were watching John Wayne on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Unforgiven might be my favorite movie of all time. So I was down with doing a Western.
And so how did the development go to include the sci-fi? I mean, I think it's in the first trade, right? There's a bunch of your emails back and forth and you're kind of designing the aesthetic and things like that.
Right.
So was that all you really did, was just email back and forth and kind of figured out what worked and what didn't?
Yeah, we must have traded maybe 150 emails over 3 or 4 months and just sort of found the spirit of the thing before, and then it was just off we went.
And what I love about this series, I mean, I love westerns and I love sci-fi, so it really works. But I like how it's not like really heavy on either side, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Like there's a really good balance between those elements. And then the way that you, especially in the first trade, how you develop the kind of short like murder mystery, but then there's lots of allusions and things to a greater, broader story that will be dealt with in time.
Yeah, and that, I think that was that's all Jay. He's got a nice sense of effectively world building, I guess. So yeah, we had talked about a lot of those things. I think everything that was in that first arc was hammered out in those emails. And then after the first arc finished up, we talked about some more stuff and how, the second arc is going to go. And so after each one finishes, we sort of step back and take a look at the picture that's been painted and see sort of what's needed where, what we can do with what we got.
Right, and it does feel very seamless. Like the jump between the first and second arc, it feels like only a little bit of time has passed, but that these characters have really developed throughout their adventures and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of my favorite bits of the story is this kind of war that's gone on, that's kind of hinted at, but we're not really given a whole lot of explanation to. I imagine you guys have plans to delve into that further.
I don't know how much further. The third arc has a bit to do with that, but I mean, something like Ishmael and Boo are, I think, a lot of their character is influenced quite a bit by what happened in that war. So we may see that, but I don't know how. I don't know how important it is that we actually see anything that happened. I just personally, me, I wouldn't mind if we never went back to it. The characters can talk about it, but I don't know that it's I don't know how important the specifics of the war are to the now of Copperhead, but I don't know. It could change. Tomorrow Jay could email me and say, I've got this super badass idea about the war. And I'll say, yeah, that is super badass. You should do that.
Because I like how you've done it where it's kind of through just very succinct flashbacks, like Boo's almost kind of PTSD moments.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as a reader, to me, that's enough to have that information and be able to put things together based on that. I don't know. I don't need much more than that, but maybe there are plans for it.
Right, and I mean, even myself, it's an interesting concept because just the way that kind of stuff is presented, I want to see more. But I do agree with you that I don't think I would want like a whole arc dedicated to this massive memory in the past. Like it's a really interesting story technique where, especially in the first trade, where Boo's chasing the like speeder or some kind of vehicle, and he like jumps but he doesn't make it, and it's like this parallel scene between the two of them. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff makes the storytelling really, really interesting and engaging.
Well, thanks. Yeah. The flashback and the alternating between the scenes, that was all Jay. That was all in the script. Perfect.
Well, you artistically delivered, so well done.
Oh, thank you.
Who is your favorite character? Do you have one that you just like to read? Do you have a favorite that you like to draw?
I really like drawing Boo, but I think Clara might be my favorite character in the book.
They both have a lot of attitude.
Yeah, I just really get her, and I really like drawing her expressions. I think she's she's a tough cookie, but she's a big softie on the inside. So going from those extremes back and forth is fun.
Did you guys talk about any kind of specific Western or sci-fi tropes that you wanted to kind of play with or exploit or mess around with?
I think we might have talked about sci-fi tropes that we wanted to stay away from.
Or that's a good option too.
That sounds like a thing. I don't remember exactly what they were or our reasoning behind not including them. But no, I mean, I think in the second volume, Jay he really wanted to do the posse, So that's where that came from. Um, but no, I can't think of anything that's on the to-do list for either genre.
Because something I've noticed, and I kind of mentioned it before, how there's a good balance, is that it doesn't feel too techy. There's not, these really easy solutions based on technology. So it's still kind of primitive.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
when you go
Go ahead.
into your design, like your visual design, was it a lot just Jay saying, "Hey, let's kind of tone this down," or did you present him a lot of sketches and roughs, and then he kind of decides, I like this, or maybe do this a little bit more or less?
Um, I don't think I have given him anything. I think the only design I ever shared was for the police cruiser. Um, I think there was a little back and forth on that one, but everything else is just me doing it on the page, and the first time he sees it is when I send him the finished page. Um, but no, that was a conscious effort on my part. I like my favorite sort of future sci-fi tech stuff is all from 80s sci-fi movies, like Aliens and Terminator and pardon me, and it just where all the screens they look like they're looking at a fish finder in the year 2800. It's just all of that stuff, lots of exposed circuits and tubing and that sort of stuff. I love it. So yeah, it all looks very low tech. I mean, today when you watch it, it's like, oh my god. Um, but yeah, I love low tech sci-fi.
And that definitely adds in this kind of element of clunkiness into the Western aesthetic as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things I pitched was for the actual town. I think I wanted it to look like LV-426 from Aliens, sort of like boxy, sort of pre-made structures that were kind of just dropped there. And then over time, as they fell apart and broke down, people just used whatever they could find lying around to sort of patch it up and piece it together.
So I don't usually ask about more of the collaborators besides just the artist and writer, but I was just flipping through Copperhead and I wanted to ask, how's it been working with Thomas as a letterer? Do you guys correspond a lot? Well, how much does he engage in as a designer and as a letterer?
Uh, that would be a good question for Jay. I'm not involved at all in the design of the book. Um, I want to say Thomas just does his thing, and he's just, you know, uh, a super genius. So I'm sure he nails everything the first time.
Yeah, he definitely does a really good job with all of that stuff.
Yeah, for real.
So you've mentioned there's plans for more stuff, and I've seen Jay on Twitter mention as well. There's more arcs plans. So do you guys kind of have
Yes.
an end, or is it just kind of you're rolling with the punches and figuring out things as you go until you decide that that's enough?
Yeah, there's definitely no end. We've never talked about that. Yeah, I think, I mean, I would like to just do it until Image says don't do it anymore. Um, I don't know how feasible that is with the way the world works, but yeah, I mean, it's a book that I love. It's a book that I'm dying to get back to, and it's yeah, when I say I love it, I really do love it. It's the most rewarding uh, art experience that I've ever had. Jay's awesome, and Ron is awesome, and Thomas is awesome, and it's nice to sit down. It's nice and rare to be able to sit down at the artboard and really love the lines you're putting down, because I guess it's a lot of it is me. There's a lot of me in this book. When Jay and I were putting it together, I don't think we used, I think it's 50-50 right down the middle. There's not, 80% his ideas. And I feel like I've got a real stake in ownership of the book, and it's extremely rewarding. And every time people come up to me and tell me how much they love it, it's just the best thing.
That's awesome. What can you tease for the future then? What kind of snippets can you give us for things you have planned?
Well, at the end the second volume, we introduced the murder mystery with the mayor. So we got to deal with that. There was, Ford got the message that Clay had escaped from prison. So there's that. There's still the sort of weird relationship between Ishmael and Clara, sort of what his deal actually is, sort of still up in the air. Hickory's always up to no good. I think those are the immediate things that are going to get resolved next. But the war's still hanging out there. I'm sure Zeke probably in something else. Lots to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited. I just read the second trade. I was a little behind. But after that, I was like, oh, okay, I'm ready for more as soon as possible.
On.
So the Dark and Bloody.
Yep.
How can you pitch that? How do you sell it?
Well, I think the way that it was pitched to me is sort of like, let's see if I can remember it now. It's I hate to use something like the term in the vein of justified. It's got a different tone than that. It's like I don't know. It's like if Stephen King wrote an episode of Mountain Monsters or whatever. It's that's all superficial stuff, but I think at the core, it's it's a story of actions and consequences, and that's always a sort of a topical issue,
right?
Especially with the backdrop of Iraq and Afghanistan and all the conflict in the Middle East, which is sort of what this story hangs on.
Right. So what appealed you to doing this story? How did you and Sean get in contact?
Through Jamie Rich, the editor. I think Jamie had emailed me at one point and asked if I wanted to do a short for the SFX anthology that he was putting together, and the timetable on that guy just didn't work out. But then he came back and said, well, I've got this miniseries, you take a look at it. It might be interesting for you. So yeah, he sent it to me and I read it, and it was something I really wanted to be a part of.
Okay. It's a very different book than Copperhead.
Yes, it is.
So how do you approach one or the other? What kind of mindset do you have to get into to draw this versus what you had to do for Copperhead?
Um, I think horror in comics is just a difficult genre to begin with. Um, so it takes a lot. The the mental hurdles in this, I would say, are greater than in Copperhead. Copperhead's a lot of it's more action oriented and um, uh, yeah. I mean, they're just different animals. With the horror stuff, it's not just if you know somebody's you got one panel of somebody talking and maybe somebody else doing something else in the background, getting a cup of coffee or something. Um, the temptation is just to make it flat and just draw it, but it's a horror book. You gotta. It's like with every action, you sort of have to find the most unsettling way to draw it. So you frame it through, the window, or you go low, or yeah, just the process of laying out and illustrating a horror book is, maybe I make it too complicated. Maybe that's what's happening, but it's yeah, the mental jumping jacks are pretty exhausting.
So rather than just strictly kind of focusing on making it look good, you have to make it look like that specific genre.
Yeah, more get the feeling of it, like
Right, that's better. That's better said.
yeah, it's all about tone and mood, and I mean, Trish saves me a lot with the colors in that regard. Um, but yeah, yeah, tone and mood is it's a difficult thing to for me anyway to convey in a static image. So that takes a lot of doing. I'm constantly redrawing stuff. Like I'll send Jamie my layout, and then I'll decide that it's too boring and it's not, creepy or unsettling enough. So I'll change, half the panels on there. And I'm sure it's I like to think it's better when he gets it, but sometimes maybe when he gets it, he's like, that's not what I signed off on. But hopefully it's better. Lots of redrawing.
So definitely stretching some different muscles.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely, yes, yeah. Yeah. It's not even in the same ballpark.
Awesome. Well, it too looks fantastic. So I think you're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
And so this is a mini series, you said?
This guy's 6 issues, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yep. And then, so kind of how far ahead are you? What issue are you working on today?
I am efforting to wrap up 3 here, so that I can get started on 4 and get that to Trish, so she can get it done with enough time.
Awesome. So I just realized I didn't ask you if you went to school for like illustration or if this is just kind of homegrown. Did you go to higher education?
I didn't take. I took a couple of art classes for it, but I didn't go to an art school or the Art Institute or anything like that. I don't have a degree in graphic design or illustration or whatever. No, this is just something I had to figure out on my own. I remember going to the Art Institute of Phoenix here, and for senior day, and going in, and they give you their whole spiel or whatever. It's 2 hours long, and at the end, you get to ask questions. So I asked them, what do you have in the way of comic books or traditional illustration. They're like, we don't do any of that stuff anymore. So that was that. I just kind of had to figure it out, learn by doing and watching. We're lucky here in Phoenix that we have a pretty healthy local scene, so there's no shortage of guys whose brains you can pick.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And you're starting to see that more, I feel like, today, where you have a lot of artists jumping into the scene and they have they don't have a degree or they don't have that much education other than just experience.
Yeah. And look, I've never been to art school. I know people that have been to art school. There are probably very good art schools, but anybody I've ever talked to has said it's a scam. If you're going to be doing this and you're not going to be doing, designing cereal boxes or, sport team logos or whatever, then don't waste your money. Don't start your comic career $90,000 in debt.
Yeah, exactly. So, as a kid, when you were inspired by these image books, was it kind of surreal that you got to jump in pretty early in your career into image?
Well, I had started the Boom stuff at the beginning of 2010. So it was almost 5 years before Copperhead came out. I mean, it was cool. I mean, Image is it's like the cool kids club. That's how I think of it. It's I think in my mind, it's sort of where everybody wants to be. It's kind of the business model that you want. It's sort of the Wild West. You're your own editor and just do what you do, and they'll put it out there. And it's just this great thing, and yeah, I love Image. I think they're super fantastic for the industry. I think they're great for readers, certainly for creators. If you want 100% of your vision on the stands, that's the place to be.
Awesome. I agree. I mean, the majority of the stuff that I read is all Image. So let's talk about that, actually. What's on your pull list? Do you make it to the store every week?
I don't. No. I read embarrassingly little stuff. Let's see. What do I read right now? I'm still catching up on Hellboy. Mitch Gerard on Sheriff of Babylon. It's that. What else? I keep meaning to pick up Tokyo Ghosts. I have not gotten around to that. There's a lot of stuff that I mean to read, but just finding the time has just not been a successful endeavor.
Well, when you do get the time, send me a message and I'll send you a good list of suggestions.
Give me some recommendations.
I'm pretty far deep into the world of Image these days.
Right on.
So let's end with some fun questions, get some some goofy fun stuff. So when you go into a buffet, what's the first kind of plate full of food that you go for? What's the first to get eaten?
Oh, man. What kind of buffet is it?
A buffet that includes everything possible.
Everything. I think most of the buffets I've ever done are Chinese buffets, so I'm going to say like sweet and sour chicken, orange chicken, any kind of fried chicken in a red or an orange sauce I'll eat. Let's see. It's a salad to make me feel better. It's probably a better question when I'm hungry.
Yeah, it's too early to think about that.
Uh, Anything sweet, maybe some giant cookies. Ooh, yeah, I'd probably just eat a lot of chicken and cookies.
Awesome. What is your Hogwarts house? Do you know what you'd be sorted into?
Go Gryffindor.
All right, you
There's
say that
that.
hesitantly.
That and Slytherin, I guess, are the only ones I know. My wife's the Potterhead.
Okay. Well, I have an alternate question just in case you weren't
Yeah.
prepared for that one. Who is your favorite Ninja Turtle?
Oh, it's Raph.
Oh, good. Man, that's like this consistent thing we have going.
Easy.
And then finally, when you become a supervillain, what will your name be?
I don't know. Professor Ambivalent. I can't really picture myself caring too much about the thing I have conquered. Once it's done, I don't know that I have any interest in worrying about it anymore.
Awesome. I like it. That's a good explanation, too. So where can people find you online?
You can find me at Scotty God on Twitter. That's SCOTTYGOD. I've got a fan page on Facebook, ScottGodlewski.com. SCOTTGODLEWSKI. I think I've got a Blogspots account too. Tumblr, also Scotty God. And I hardly ever update any of those.
You're pretty
Twitter.
frequent on Twitter, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Awesome. And are you planning on going into any conventions in the near future?
The only thing I can think of, if Phoenix Comic Con invites me back, that's in my backyard here, I'll be doing that. I'd love to get out and do more stuff. I hear Heroes is great. It's probably too late to get in on the Emerald City Con. I'd love to do New York, but I'm extremely frugal, so it horrifies me to think about making enough money at any of those shows to cover room and board and travel and food and all that stuff. Plus, with the 3 kids, getting a babysitter for 4 days is almost impossible. So, but
Yeah, that does sound tricky.
I'd love to do any of those shows. So if any of those organizers are listening and you would like me there, then just shoot me an email. I would love to be there.
Awesome. That sounds good. Scott, thank you so much for taking your time out of your morning to spend some time with me and talk about comics. So please, this is for listeners, go check out The Dark and Bloody. And then there's 2 Copperhead trades on the stands that can be read as well, and they're all fantastic.
Great, thanks.
All right, you have a great rest of your day, and take care, and we'll see you hopefully soon at a show.
Will do. Thanks, sir.
You have been listening to Pulpcast, the official podcast of thepulpmedia.com. You can email questions that we'll answer in future episodes to thepulpmediaus@gmail.com. Also, please check out our website, thepulpmedia.com, for reviews, articles, and more.